This is The Fit Mess with Zach and Jeremy.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. We're very excited to bring our guest to you this week. His name is Ryan Sawyer. He has a brand new book out. It's called Choice Point, all about his struggle of going from a national champion coach of a college football team to on the floor battling depression in its darkest moments, and how he's found a way through and found a new life, and how he's using everything he's learned to share that experience with you and to improve your life. All right, so before we get to the interview, I had a really interesting experience this week, Zach, that I wanted to share with you because I think in the end it relates to a lot of what we talk about with Coach Sawyer. You know that feeling, and I know this is happening for everyone everywhere right now, when you're walking through your yard and you walk through a spider web, and it's just like, you're just, like it, out of nowhere, didn't see it coming, this feeling.
My reaction is usually quite a bit more than just,
Is it more, something like
it's
that?
a little bit like that, but if you saw me from across the street, you would think, oh, there's the crazy guy again.
Well, I kept having moments like that, but in my mind, for some reason, walking through my yard, living my life, doing my thing, I would flash to these moments as a child when I was angry, like alone, screaming, just having these traumatic experiences. And I just, for no reason, they just kept popping into my head. And I was like, God, that is weird. Where is that coming? I haven't thought about that in 20 years. That's so weird. And it's weird because I was re-experiencing all of that fear, the shame that went with it, not knowing what to do. Like all these feelings would just rush through me as these memories would pop into my head. Couldn't figure out why. One night I'm in my kids' room, and we often are just sitting with our kids trying to get them to fall asleep. And I decided I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to meditate on this. I'm going to really focus on these memories and try and figure out what it is that they're trying to tell me. And so I just sat quietly, was breathing and just thinking back to those moments and trying to figure out what is the deal. And I was holding my daughter's hand, and I noticed that she was snuggling with her porg, her porg puppet that we got in Disney World.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I flashed back to when we were in Disney World together and how normal life was. We were laughing at coronavirus. We were laughing because one of the people that was with us was sick. And we're like, you got the Rona.
Mm-hmm.
Making fun of him. But all of a sudden, it all connected for me that I was my body, my mind, my spirit, whatever, was trying to make me process the fear and insecurity and the lack of safety that I'm feeling right now because of this pandemic. It's something that, I live my life in my house and in my yard. I very rarely leave my own property. So I don't have to wear a mask every day. I don't have to do a lot of the things that people have to do to get through the day. I just stay home, which is kind of a dream situation for me. But in that moment, recognizing how different the world is from 6 months ago, I just started weeping. Like I just was totally crying about the loss of normalcy, the feeling of fear, and just the recognition of how I don't feel safe. And that's not something that I've processed in this whole time. But the crazy thing was, it connected all the dots that I was having with those memories. And it was like something in me was trying to say, dummy, sit with this for a minute. Like acknowledge this, go through this, because you're just ignoring it, pretending that the world is fine outside by hiding in your house.
Mm-hmm.
And I cried through it. My kids cried with me. It was kind of a lovely little shared moment where I was able to show them vulnerability, able to show them that it's okay to be afraid.
Yeah.
And at once I was at peace with all of it. And that feeling of fear went away, and those memories have not come back. And when I try to think of them, my relationship with them is different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that same the shame of being out of control and sadness and all these things. So it was just really powerful. And it just reminded me how much, we talk all the time on this show about how important meditation or something like it, yoga for you, how
Yep.
important it is. And that, for me, thinking back on the last few years using meditation, there's been no more powerful tool in finding my own healing than using that for these moments, because I've had now a handful of these moments where something from the past, some traumatic experience comes up, and I'm able to revisit it and see it through a different lens and to really heal and grow from it. And so I opened this show with that story, hoping that someone who's out there trying to struggle with these feelings, struggle with this reality, just to remind you, not even to necessarily meditate. That's not even what I'm trying to push, but just sit with the feeling. Just find a way to just experience it, because anything else will prolong your healing from what we're all going through. So I just wanted to share that, because it was just, when I have these moments, they're life-changing. They're extremely powerful. And so I hope that hearing this will help someone who hears this story, and finding their way through whatever life is throwing at them right now because of the way we're all living.
Right. Well, that's really powerful. I mean, we are all going through a rather traumatic time here. And even if you don't want to think of it as traumatic, we've all lost something very dear to us. And my wife and I are on vacation right now, and I use big air quotes here, vacation, because we went to a different location. And, even today we went to the downtown where, there's signs everywhere saying, you have to wear a mask. If you're here, you wear a mask. So everyone's wearing a mask. We tried to go into a store, and it's this cute little bookshop that we go in every year. And they were like, you need to wait outside. We're at our max capacity of 8 people. There's usually, 30, 40 people in the store.
Right.
And then it was time to get some lunch. And we're like, okay, where can we get lunch? Well, that place is takeout. That place is takeout. That place is takeout. And we finally found a nice place where you could get a sandwich and eat, at a picnic table. But it is, the normalcy, right? We have lost it.
Yeah.
And who knows if we're going to get it back anytime soon, right?
Yeah.
We will eventually, but this is forever changing us. And in my mind, it's very traumatic because I lost something that I valued greatly. And that was going on vacation and experiencing a downtown, or, going to the mall to pick something up. Or as much as I hate going to the mall, I would love to go to the mall just to like stroll through and see people and see faces, right? Being here on vacation again, everyone's wearing masks when they're outside. I can't see faces. I just see eyeballs. And I really don't like that.
Yeah.
I like to see people's faces. I like to smile at people. I like to see people smile back. It's very depressing to be in this situation. So kudos to you for stopping and acknowledging that you were actually, traumatized by this experience, and you needed to process it.
And I think a lot of it is there's so much change happening for me this week. Like, right now I'm living it up, man. The family's out of town. They're gone. I'm all alone. It's just me and the cat, and we hate each other. Beyond that, it's great.
So let me guess. You partied it up last night, went to bed at 8.
I did stay up till midnight. I had some Star Wars stuff to watch, so I had to do that. But
oh, really?
Yeah.
Existing Star Wars or old Star Wars?
Old. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the Resistance cartoon. It's it could have been a lot better.
It could have been.
But this week there's a ton of change. School starting for my kids, sort of. It's online. They're still going to be here. My wife, her last day at work was Monday. So she's going to be adapting to learning this new role that she's taking on. And, me, I'll still be here doing what I do every day, but trying to figure out how I fit in the mix of my wife's new schedule, my kids' school schedule, which I saw, they emailed it today, and they've got it broken down like per half hour for when they're not on the screen. Like, do this from 10 to 10:30 and this from 10:30 to 11. I can tell you right now, not happening. That schedule will not be followed by anyone anywhere other than when you have to be on a call on Zoom or Teams or whatever you're using. That's when we'll follow the schedule. Outside of that, good luck. So this week being a point of transition, I think, is what highlighted that instability, that sort of fear that was bubbling up and sort of feeling out of control again because I don't know what life is going to look like next week when, normal, the current normal takes over. And you said something interesting about not about being worried about or thinking about ever going back to normal. I don't think we'll ever go back to normal. I think that we will establish new normals that we will all get used to. I think that we will be wearing masks for years.
Oh, yeah.
So learning to adapt around that and adapt around a vaccine when it's here and who uses it and who doesn't and how globally it's distributed and all of the things, it's going to create a normal that we won't recognize. And so I've given up the idea that we're ever going back to normal. I just want to get to a point where it's safe to get on a plane and go somewhere for a while.
Yeah, no, same here. And that plane is going to go to Orlando or LA for Disney.
Yeah, or Hawaii.
That too. That would work.
Any of those.
In a pinch, I'd take Hawaii.
Just quick rant, just real quick. All of this shit, of course, happens the year that I finally get off my ass and sign up for an Alaska Airlines, rewards card. I put this off for like 15 years, but finally I was like, you know what? Finances are starting to get under control. This bill's going away. That bill's going away. I'm going to start racking up some miles. This is going to be great. I'm going to travel. It's going to be terrific. I'm going to take advantage of the thing that all of my friends have done forever. And now I basically get the luxury of paying the service charge without the benefits of using the free flights. So pissed. Anyways, rant over, but just quickly, story of my life, right? Finally get on board for the big win, and too late.
Yep, you're right. And when you say the new normal, right? I think the big thing is that everyone wants this to just go away, poof, and we go back to normal tomorrow, right?
Well, say, and some are saying we're already there, but they're wrong.
Yeah. So a college close to where we live, and where I grew up, interestingly enough, all those kids went back and they had a wild, crazy party about a week ago, and now there's 177 cases at the college. Wow. Like, just blew up to the point where the governor is going to have to bring in the SWAT team. It's amazing.
Oh my God. I am curious to see if there's any fallout from the Republican convention, because there were several people gathered without masks, and many of them in a fragile age group. So I'm just curious, not a political statement, just curious.
We'll see.
We'll see. So with all this talk about, sort of how we're surviving the current pandemic and the state of the world, this is something that's been sort of a theme, I think, for us and will be in coming episodes is choosing how to live with this, choosing how we allow it to affect our lives. And I think for all of us, there's going to come, and there are starting to be points for us, times when we need to make a choice. Like, how much are we going to isolate from friends? How much are we going to not let our kids play with other kids? How much are we going to let this completely isolate us from the world? And for how long? I know that the armor for us in that is starting to crack. We're starting to have, distanced outdoor barbecues, going out on the lake, doing things that are safe, and outside. And of course, as we're starting to do that, the weather's starting to turn. So it's going to be very difficult to have outside gatherings, that sort of thing. But again, the point of just making a choice. And that's where I want to introduce our guest. His name is Ryan Sawyer. He was one of the coaches for Eastern Washington University, won a national title, married to a lovely bride, starting a family. On the outside, he had it all. He had the dream job. He had everything going for him. And that was after years of quietly battling depression and this feeling underneath that something wasn't right. And it all came to a head when his wife just found him in a ball crying on the floor because the depression at that point was winning and he had a choice to make. And so we had a conversation the other day about that choice and how it has completely turned his life around and why he doesn't even recognize the man he used to be. You had the dream job, a job that people would work their entire lives to get. You won the championship, all the things that you would strive to accomplish. So I'm curious to hear how you answer the question that I get asked a lot. What did you have to be depressed about?
Yeah, that's the question right there that leads to, in the moment when you are going through this experience of depression and anxiety, that makes it even worse, because the compound effect of guilt adds up, because that's the very story I was telling myself, like, hey, you don't have anything to be depressed about. So then the story just reaffirms itself, because then you beat yourself up for it. I mean, you look back at your life and say, hey, I had this good childhood experience, parents were together. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was healthy, and so why is it that I'm experiencing this? Why is it that in my early teen years and my later teen years that I experienced suicidal thoughts? And why is it in my 20s was just a sabotage fest of not being able to sleep and all the above, right? And so why is it now in this situation where I'm living this dream life from the outside looking in? I mean, it's my dream job. I'm a Division I defensive line coach, just won a national championship, marrying my wife. And so what's really going on? And I think that inner turmoil of not only judging myself for it and feeling guilty because I'm experiencing it, just compounds the experience of it. But in all reality, what I have found is that we don't need to have a reason. Mm-hmm. This is something that can be generational. It can be something that is a compound effect over time of just not being aware, not being in control of what's happening from an internal perspective. And really what it comes down to is the meaning making that we place on what's happening in our lives, right? So all the way back to our early childhood development, something could happen that made you feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm stupid, whatever it is. And then you continue to reaffirm this limiting belief about yourself. Mm-hmm. And until it actually will at some point manifest itself into this physical reality of what we call life. And that's even where we found ourselves in my marriage. My wife and I, Heidi, we when I left coaching, it was it means like the end or the result or the outcome of me saying that, hey, now we're overcoming this. That was the beginning, right? That was the beginning of the fight. And eventually we led ourselves down a path where we were even more apart and grew further and further apart to the point where we almost had to end our marriage because we just didn't see any other way out of it, Mm-hmm. And that was a reaffirming belief that I felt like sooner or later I'm going to screw this up. I don't deserve to be happy. I don't deserve this beautiful family and home. Yeah. And so, I think that's just being hyper aware of what's the narrative that's running in our mind, right?
Yeah. When and how did you discover that what you've been battling all this time was depression? Did you know as a young man, or was this a relatively new discovery?
I had suspicions. There was definitely major signs. I remember reaching out when I was like 22 for help and getting a little bit of answers. I mean, the doctors at that point in time were just like, "Oh, yep, you're bipolar or this, and here's some medication." And I would take it for a while to help me sleep. I'd feel like a zombie, and I'd stop taking it. And so, what I was experiencing, I did it so internally and I suppressed it so much. I never told anybody. Even my wife didn't know that I was dealing with depression until she found me curled up in the ball in a corner of a room one day going, "Well, what's going on? What are you doing?" Yeah. And so, I think there was definitely moments throughout my life where it came to enough of a head to where I realized this is not right. This is not normal. But I honestly, at the time, Jeremy, I thought that there was something wrong with me. I just thought I was fundamentally messed up. Right. And again, I had this belief that sooner or later, this depression was going to win. And it really wasn't until I spoke it out loud, when my wife found me in that curled up in the ball, that I said, "I'm depressed." Mm-hmm. Like that was the first time that I said it. I admitted it. I was able to look at it. And it, honestly, in that moment, I had this small sense of relief because I was being authentic for a moment, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wasn't wearing the mask that just caused more repression, suppression, and suffering.
Yeah. Walk me through some of the steps that you took then to start climbing out of that darkness, what you walked away from, sort of how you decided to change your life and go on the path that you've been on.
Yeah. So 2015, we walked away from coaching. And I initially went down the road of like Spartan training. I lost 70 pounds and I became a Spartan SGX coach. And I thought, hey, the more I can push myself, the more relief I'll find, right? Because I'd have these moments where if I did 300 burpees and did this and that and the other, then I'd have a couple of days of calm. But it was just because I beat myself to death almost, right?
Yeah. I like to say that that tired muscles, quiet dark voices. That's something that I say to myself a lot.
And so I thought, hey, this is the answer. I'll just have to continue to get better at pushing myself physically, right? And that honestly didn't last long. And eventually Heidi and I, like I said, where we were kind of at this breaking point with our own marriage, where we realized, hey, we have to do some major work to have a chance at saving this, right? So we started to do more deep internal work. I mean, I went down the path of meditation and, had a very intense meditative practice doing Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And really for me, Jeremy, I'm kind of a guy that super resistant, I used to be very, very skeptic about just about anything. It was out of my realm of comfort, right? I mean, I felt like I had a lot about life figured out at the time when you're, in the type of role and profession that I was in, you kind of think that you kind of have things figured out. For me, it was starting to connect the dots to what was happening on a scientific level.
Yeah.
Like what is this neuroplasticity? What does that mean? And how are our cells reproducing? Like what's going on there? And epigenetics, right? And to start to realize that, hey, I can rewire. Like if I created this mess, I can untangle it.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to start to learn the tools on how to witness my thoughts, to let them go, to be able to replace them with something that's serving me, to be able to heal these parts, these fragmented parts of myself that are from early childhood development. It's trauma doesn't have to always mean some sort of abuse. It can just mean this meaning making that we can continue to compile over time that eventually this is all these little tiny paper cuts, right? And they add up.
Yeah.
And so the process of meditation. And then Heidi and I got into some pretty deep emotional work called shadow work, where we really are able to trace back to the origin of where we made these agreements with ourselves that, for example, that I'm not worthy or I'm stupid or whatever these things are that continue to play out as narratives in our minds, right? And therefore show up in our lives. We go back and we kind of find the root of those things. We rewrite the narrative from that 10-year-old or 8-year-old boy, right? And then we are able to visualize or picture ourselves like, how would our life have been different with a different narrative? Like, that you're smart, you're worthy, or you're capable, whatever it is, right? And then from there you're able to recognize like, okay, if this was the truth of me, how would I then authentically show up in this moment, right? And start to take small incremental shifts and small authentic actions towards building your confidence in a way that you haven't before, and to build and to experience more peace. And eventually, over time, with these practices of meditation, of breath work, of doing this deep shadow work and yoga and somatic movement, that you actually can, I like to tell people, like, you can teach your body how to feel the way you want to feel, right? And so the more I feel guilt and despair, then I am programming my mind and my body to feel more of that in the future.
Yep.
So if I can release it, not judge it, but just release it, I'm not suppressing it. If I can release it and I can replace it with something and I can teach my body how to feel peace and joy and be abundant, then that's what I'm going to attract more of in my life.
So it's so interesting. So much of your story resonates with me because I was very similar. I felt like I had life pretty well figured out. This deck was stacked against me. Depression was going to win. All of the things that you're saying here. And through similar thing, meditation, breath work, I had these experiences where I went back and reprogrammed these events that happened in my life and healed from them in a way that years of therapy couldn't do, but in like one session of breath work or one meditation just corrected it. And that has sent me on this other journey, trying to do more of that and trying to connect with what I can only describe as like a spiritual journey. And that's been really hard to grapple with because I was a pretty, and I'm not a religious person, but it is really hard to go from, the earth is a rock and we're all here by accident. And, all this stuff's just going to happen to, there are other forces that seem to be at work that we can sort of control. I mean, it's sort of Star Wars like, right? Like you connect to the force and you can make things happen in a weird way. Is that in line with sort of where you're at, and how has that shift been for you to kind of open up to a more spiritual experience?
So there's no question that I was of the mind frame, there is no God. Like
Yeah.
we talk about, we're all just here on this rock for while we're here. So you might as well have a good time while you're here and party it up and whatever, right? There's no bigger purpose. And just, I would just shrug my shoulders at people like, I don't know what you're talking about. But when things started to show up, and really part of it was for me, it was like recognizing, like, why not adopt, like, for somebody else? I see somebody else experiencing something that I want to experience, more joy and peace. And I'm like, so I want to know, like, what's working for them.
Yeah.
How do they start their day? Like, what are their beliefs? What is their internal process that actually is working? Because obviously mine is not.
Right. Totally.
It's pretty apparent to me that, like, whatever internally is happening inside of here, like, needs to be reprogrammed, right?
Yeah.
When you pull this old hardware out and install some new one, right?
Yeah.
So it was honestly just open the door to possibility. Like, let me hear about your thoughts. Let me hear what you believe in. Okay, so I would meet with people who are very universe driven, like, oh, everything's about the universe, and whatever terminology, universe, God, spirit, whatever. It really, to me, is all the same. And so I'm not a religious man, but I am a spiritual man, and it's become to a place now where, like, my spiritual practice before was for an outcome of, like, quieting my mind, right? For a specific outcome. And now I have a spiritual practice that is because I want to remind myself of what I'm connected to.
Right.
This larger energy that's at work in my life that we can co-create with.
Right.
And so there's no question that there was a ton of resistance, and then I can recognize some of that resistance falling away. And the more that I open up and be curious and kind of keep that beginner's mind, the more that more like possibility was being allowed into my life. And the more I was able, man, this is such an important topic. I was able to let go.
Yeah.
I was able to surrender. And I used to hate that word, right? I was able to surrender parts about myself, this is, I think, a real common principle that's coming up a lot recently in my life is the price of a new life is the old one. Like, we have to be willing to cut ties.
Yeah.
And to let go of and realize, hey, maybe I was wrong for 35 years, right? Maybe, and that's okay. It's okay that version of me was wrong, or right or wrong, or had a different perspective of life. But this version of me is going to open up my mind and see what is possible with a different way of perspecting life, And so it's not overnight, no question. For me, it was. I think it can be for some people. They have some miraculous experience that's like, oh, now I'm a believer, right?
Right.
But it was incremental for me.
So how does that translate to your life now? Do you still have moments of depression? Is it still an ongoing struggle? How is life for you now?
Yeah. So now I would say I'm a very healthy person, mentally, physically, and emotionally. But there is still times I don't equate it, and this is going to be, I haven't really talked about this before in public. So what I now experience is what I call upgrades.
Okay.
So when I am stepping into my power in a different manner, right? When I'm taking on something new or stepping outside of my comfort zone. For a great example is my book, right? This idea that I have enough capacity to write a book, right? And then I have enough confidence to actually put it out to the world. And then I'm creating a coaching model that's kind of based in the foundational principles of the book. And now I'm on all these podcasts and doing like, this is breaking some serious conditioning.
Yeah.
Right? I am healing parts of myself. Parts of myself are dying off, old neural pathways. Certain genes are firing and other genes are turning off, right? You know what I mean? Cells are reproducing it, with different vibrations. So this is a chemical shift.
Yeah.
It creates different reactions within your body, right? Very easily, if I were to be in the story of what I'm feeling, I would call that depression. I mean, there's been 8 or 10 day spells where my vibration is low and I feel this sense of loss in my chest and I'm having a hard time really casting in sort of clear vision for my future. Right. All these things sound very familiar to depression, right?
Oh, yeah.
But yet I am in that recognizing, no, this is the process of transformation. I'm fully in the river right now. This was a few weeks ago. Okay. So I'm weeks away from my book launch. I'm weeks away from this whole new experience of life because I'm transitioning from not just having my residential painting company to being an author, speaker, and running this coaching model with my wife, right? So life is about to drastically change.
Yeah.
And I put myself out there to such a level and being vulnerable enough to where I kind of feel like I'm walking down the street naked.
Right.
So there's parts of me that don't want me to tell this story.
Sure.
Parts of me that are still like, don't say that part. Don't talk about that turn into oncoming traffic. You don't want people to know that part.
Right. Yeah.
So that neurological, what I call pruning, right? I'm pruning old neurological connections that used to wire and fire together, right?
Yeah.
And creating new ones. And so that experience, which creates chemical reactions and everything else within our bodies, feels like depression. Now, even my wife's like, are you doing okay? And I'm like, I'm not suffering, but I'm not comfortable.
Yep.
I'm not just waking up like, hey, life's a bunch of roses.
Right.
But I recognize the more that we take on and step out of our comfort zone and take on a new belief and really integrate these things into our lives to where now we can't go back to an old experience, where this new experience of life is completely different and new and fresh. There's going to be some conditioning that gets broken there. And it could very well potentially show up and be labeled as anxiety or depression. But it also can be labeled as just like anticipation and excitement.
Yeah.
And, and so I do everything I can to just sit back and witness what I'm experiencing now, right? And not attach or identify and go, oh boy, here it comes.
Yeah.
See, you're trying to put this book out there and this depression is going to come back. You better run and hide, because that's what's really happening underneath the surface. That's the story that's wanting to be told by my narrative. And so I let it go and I replace it. And I let it go and I replace it. And I let it go and I replace it over and over, thousands of times.
Yeah.
In the last few weeks. Even.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can relate, like, just as a dad who's trying to work from home, trying to do a podcast, trying to start a small business, all the like it's tons of stuff to get overwhelmed by. And when you do get caught up in this has to succeed or else there's going to be a problem, or I have to be a better dad, or else, like, when you put all this pressure on yourself to do and be these things that are, like you mentioned, the river, you can't change the direction of the river. You can only change, you can slightly alter your path on it, but the river's going to take you where it's going to take you. And being able to let go and let that river happen, let that experience happen, opens up so many more doors than it closes.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
And to add to that too, I think that one of the pieces that we, especially in our culture, is we get attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
Get attached, probably, I'm assuming, I'm doing this podcast, I'm invested all this time and equipment and energy and this and that and the other. Like, if I do all this work and it doesn't succeed, like, I'm going to be a failure, right? I mean, whatever that narrative that's running, right?
Yeah.
And there's no question, like, the voice that's trying to keep you in a known, not even comfortable. Like, I don't really like that word comfort zone, because what I was experiencing wasn't comfortable.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't comfortable,
but it's familiar. It's it's the song,
it's the known.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the all it's the experience of guilt and despair and depression and anxiety. These things, like, if someone calls that comfortable, like, no.
Yeah. My therapist likes to say that that kind of conditioning is like, you know how to play one song on the piano. So when you sit down, that's the song you play. And it's not until you start learning new songs that it suddenly becomes interesting and exciting, and you actually grow, You have
different impressions on your minds. That's now the song that's running, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Tell me a little bit about this transition. I mean, going from, forgive the expression, but the typical macho football coach guy to being this vulnerable, open dude. What's been the reaction from people around you? Have you lost friends? Has anything changed where people sort of see you differently and you're not as connected to people as you were?
For the most part, the people who are in my life now didn't know that guy.
Oh, yeah. See, that's interesting.
Show them pictures and be like, no, seriously. This is like, pictures of football or coaching, headphones on, 270 pounds with a can of Copenhagen in my back pocket. it's just, honestly, I saw a picture just a couple of days popped up in my memories from 2012, and it was my whole D line. I had 18 guys there in a team photo, and I've got my arms crossed, and I'm, sunglasses on. I'm just
Right.
wow. I don't even recognize that person. I can remember what it was like to be him, but I don't recognize him from my current experience now of life. And so there's no question that there's been a change in some of the relationships in life, and even in some of the really close ones. Like, that was part of the guilt of going through leaving coaching. I mean, my nucleus of support and my circle of influence, it was around coaching.
Mm-hmm.
My brother, who came to almost every game, my dad came to almost every game. We were super close, and not that we're not close now, it's just different.
Yeah.
And all of my best friends were all from football, either players I played with or guys I coached or guys I coached with. I mean, it was my whole life was built around this identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I have a lot of friends who are more in the coaching world or the entrepreneur world and that type of stuff. And so they don't really know that person, So there's definitely been some people who I spend less time with, no question,
Mm-hmm.
and have different, our relationships have shifted, but really it all comes back to the experience of being in the four walls of my own home. Like, the majority of my time is spent here.
Yeah.
And we are always focusing on what it's like to have the internal experience of being me first, and then the we, so the I sphere, meaning what is it like to be Ryan, and then the we sphere of Heidi and I, and then the it sphere of our family, right? And so we're always working from the inside out. And honestly, I get so much more fulfillment than I ever knew was possible out of those four walls that I live in, right?
Yeah.
And then so I have less need to go out and have a beer with the guys type of stuff like I used to. Felt like, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Get me out on the town where I can, run amok.
Right.
So there's definitely been a transition. There's definitely been a transition there. But I'm also coming across and meeting a ton of really, really impactful people, and guys like yourself. They're out there doing things that are uncomfortable and growing. Mm-hmm. I'm really not into chit chat of hey, so I'll talk about the Seahawks for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
But not much. And so I want meaningful relationships. We're talking about growth and life and evolving and spiritual and this and that and the other, and going beyond, or whatever it is the conversation sparks into, those are the conversations I want to have.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why my buddy and I started this podcast. It was just we felt like we're two sort of middle-aged guys that are having these conversations, and people need to hear middle-aged guys having these conversations, because all they hear from guys is Seahawks, baseball, beer, work. And it's always the superficial topics that they don't help you move along as a person. They don't help you grow. And I think when you do share your real authentic experience with another person and let them in a little bit, you both grow from that experience.
Question. And then the conversation turns into, if I would have done this, or I could have done that, or if I wouldn't have blown out my knee, I would have been.
Yeah.
If we're just living in the past, man, I want to be here present with you.
Yep.
Or I want to be talking about what's next for you.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Let's talk about what's next for you. You've got the coaching business taking out the book. The book, as of the publishing of this episode, is available. So I'm looking forward to reading the book. Tell us about the coaching program as well, and what you guys have going with that.
Yeah, so this whole idea of being a coach outside of sports was something I was super resistant to for a very long time. But it wasn't until I realized, I've just been an absolute obsessed with learning and making myself an experiment. I've now have 6 different certifications between being an unbeatable mind coach and a mindfulness meditation teacher and a Kokoro yoga instructor, and all these different pieces of the puzzle that I really dove into those things to deepen my own practice, right? Mm-hmm. And then it was understanding hey, listen, I'm not taking all this information in and digesting it and integrating it for just myself. I want to share it now. And so Heidi and I were kind of doing our own thing. She was coaching one-on-one and having success doing that. And I was doing workshops and teaching breath and yoga and visualization, different things of that nature. And then we stopped and we're like, you know what? I see us going down this path where you're getting busier, I'm getting busier, and we're spending less time together. We've been down this path before. Stop. Like, we're going to make sure that we are aligned, because I know on the other side of this is going to have to be work that we're going to have to untangle. Right. So I was like, how can we align ourselves? Well, that's now the name of the membership, is Be Aligned. And so it's not couples coaching, but it is this idea or principle that individuals do their own work. Right. And we're setting up a membership that is starting in September. And it's 30 days free. For the first 30 days is free, no obligation. And so people can hop in there. And in this membership, it's going to be unique, because I'm going to have a ton of content on breath and meditation, and even have some yoga practice in there a little bit and things of that nature. And then eventually we'll go into all kinds of principles of like the big 4 mental toughness from unbeatable mind, or our Q process stuff, which is the shadow work. And we'll be able to support people within the membership with that. Like, all these pieces can be courses that are outside of the membership, but we're putting them within the membership, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a monthly topic that are basically things that we learned along the way that helped us connect the dots to deepen our own practice, right? So how does perception work? Like, you hear this idea that you know, people are just mirrors reflecting back to our own need for healing, or whatever that, like, let's understand these basic principles, and let's do a lesson each month about a principle. And then we can have some journaling prompts behind that, and some challenges and things of that nature. And so we'll have questions and answers calls, and then we'll split up and do men's and women's calls as well. So the men can go with me, and we can get more specific into, you know, what it means to be a man type stuff, and within these principles and practices. And so, yeah, so this is the kind of the next thing for us, is to develop out this membership where we're really truly serving our community, and it's such a reasonable price that we feel like people can ebb and flow at their own pace. Like, we recognize the importance of people, you know, being able to really work on themselves in one season and pull back, and life is happening in the next. But we think it's so important to be guided and be mentored and have some sense of accountability and or just guidance, right? Support, right?
Yeah.
And creating an environment of growth to where people can kind of flow in and flow out, and be as involved as they would want to be, you know, depending on the season of life. So that's kind of our concept with that, without going too much deeper into it. But we're excited about the model and doing it together, you know, in a way that we're enjoying just working together. We're enjoying collaborating together and building it out, and eventually hopefully coaching together, obviously. So
yeah. Powerful stuff, man. You have a terrific story, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with us. And I wish you the best of luck with the book and with the coaching program and your journey forward from here.
You as well, man. I think you're doing a great job with this podcast. So thank you for having me on, and I wish you the best of luck.
Again, that was Ryan Sawyer. He's the author of Choice Point: Break the Cycle of Self-Sabotage, Accelerate Your Growth, and Realize Your True Potential. I love having conversations like that. Whenever I can get real spiritual and woo-woo with people, that's the sweet spot. I love having those kinds of conversations. And just full disclosure, I have not read the book yet. What I've heard about it is fantastic. And speaking with him, I anticipate good things. So head over to Amazon, check it out. There's a link on our website, thefitmess.com.
I was actually a little disappointed that I couldn't join in on that conversation.
Yeah, you were having some problems with the house. What was going on with your place?
What's not going on with my place? That would be a much shorter list.
All right, fair enough.
We bought the house almost a year ago, and every single month something big has kind of gone on us. This month it was the air conditioner.
Well, at least it's the end of summer, so it shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, it's not.
Hey, I know a terrific way to cool off. Grab yourself a frosty cold Athletic Brewing Company beer.
I actually have one right now.
No, do you really? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking the Run Wild IPA. This is, when I made the choice to stop drinking, there was nothing on the market that tasted good. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just all pretty much garbage.
Right.
And I succumbed to the fact that I would never drink beer again.
Mm-hmm.
And I genuinely like beer. Like
Yeah.
the alcohol part of it was a nice side effect, but I
Right.
actually really enjoyed the nice ice cold, hoppy IPA. And with Athletic Brewing Company, it's like drinking a real beer. It is a craft non-alcoholic beer, and I'm so happy I found these guys.
If you can't tell by now, they are a new sponsor of the show, so we're super excited about this partnership, and for a number of reasons. But for one, like you just suggested, the ability to have a beer and not feel like you're faking it is remarkable. The other day, I went for a bike ride for the first time in months, and when I got home, I had I believe it's the Free Wave. It's the double hop IPA. And oh man, sitting in my lawn drinking what tastes like an actual IPA was, it was like, oh, right. That's why I used to love doing this. This is amazing. So thank you to our new sponsor, Athletic Brewing Company. We have a link to them on our website as well. And they're widely available in most, beverage centers, wherever you're getting your normal beer and wine. I've seen it on a number of shelves around here in Seattle. But again, there's a link on our website, and we cannot recommend them enough because we cannot stop drinking them enough because they're delicious. So very exciting news to have them on board.
And if you live in an area where they actually don't carry them in a local store, just head on over to their website, athleticbrewing.com, and you can have some wonderful non-alcoholic craft beer delivered right to your door.
Doesn't get any easier than that.
So Jeremy, I've got a little bit of a challenge for myself. You feel free to follow along, but I know that maybe this isn't your thing every day. One of the areas that I've been struggling with lately is, fitting in time for yoga.
Mm-hmm.
I have trouble meditating because I can't sit still. I'm super highly sensitive in my entire body. So I feel pains and things, and I can't sit still. And yoga is my meditation. That's when I process things. That's when I breathe. That's when I get right in my head. And that, carries me through the week. Mm-hmm. Not that I do yoga once a week. I usually do it multiple times a week, but over the last 3 weeks, I haven't even done it once in a week. So I need to challenge myself to get better there. I need to get that back into my life. And I'm going to challenge myself to get at least 3 sessions of yoga in per week for the next month, at least, because yoga is my medicine. It's so beneficial for me. Mm-hmm. And when it's not there, like the depression sets in, the anxiety sets in, just things that don't let me live my life to my fullest set in when I'm not doing yoga. So I just don't know why I ever fall out of it, but maybe I need these moments to remind myself that stuff is important.
Yeah, it's amazing how much in the last several years of this journey, there's things like that I learn and I incorporate, and they're amazing and life changing and all of the things, and then somehow they become too hard to keep up. Either you go on vacation, you get sick, you get injured, you just forget one day, whatever it is. These things will knock you out of that habit. And, you'll hear a conversation like this. You'll read a book. You'll see some meme on Instagram, whatever. And you'll be like, oh God, yeah, I used to do that every day. I used to do that 3 times a week. I used to eat like that, whatever. And you suddenly remember, God, my life was so much better when I did that. I should try that again. And that's, I go back to the story we began the show with, being able to just meditate. And the power that I have to meditate, I think I underestimate my ability with it, because that whole experience that I shared took like 5 minutes. It wasn't even a lengthy thing. I have this ability that I forget about, and I'm not trying to brag. That's not the point of this. I think the point is that I've done enough of it that I've gotten better at it. Just like, I can't throw a football. And one time Russell Wilson couldn't either, but he worked on it and got really good. But I have this ability when I just shut the fuck up and sit down for a minute, I can become one with the ocean. I can go back in time. I have these experiences and this ability to fix stuff in my head and in my spirit, or whatever you want to call it. And when I have those moments, I go, God, why don't I do this every day? And that's where I've been. So my challenge, which began a few days ago, has been meditate more. I need to get more specific and meditate every day. I'm going floating tonight, so I'm very excited to have an hour of just silence and sensory deprivation to go even deeper. So that's my
bastard.
challenge to myself is to listen. And we talked a lot in the interview with Coach Sawyer about having a coach, about having a mentor. That's something that I think is very important. It can provide a lot of benefit, but I think you also need to remember that that voice in your head, not the fucked up one, not the one that tells you you're a piece of shit and lies to you and tells you how awful everything is, but the one that when you really listen has the answers, that one's right.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to find the time to be quiet and differentiate between the liar and the mentor, because you have one in you. We all do. But we get so wrapped up in the right now surviving, and just being safe, but also working, raising kids, all the things that we're doing, that voice gets drowned out. So
yeah. And everyone has those voices, and the one that you feed is the one that you're going to hear the most.
Yeah, absolutely. So I in the same vein, I'm going to be, I'm challenging myself to meditate every day, because I'm in one of those zones right now where I remember this is what put me on the path that started this entire journey for me. And turns out I'm pretty good at it. So
good for you.
So that's what I'm going to work on in the coming days until we meet again and hopefully beyond.
Good for you. Again, I can't sit still to meditate, but an hour of yoga, I think gives me that.
It's the same. Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah. Right. It's just, it puts me in a different place. It really does. And it's, I thought it was all just woo-woo bullshit.
Yeah.
When I've heard people say they go into a yoga class and they leave feeling different, but it's true. I go into a good yoga class, if I have a good session, I literally will walk out feeling like a different person.
Mm-hmm.
If there was depression there, it's lifted a little. If there's anxiety, it's reduced a little. If something was going on that had me worried, or some physical ailment, it's always just lessened a little bit, and I can approach my day with just a completely different mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what it's all about, is changing your mindset.
All right. So with that, we're going to wrap things up. A special thanks to our guest, Ryan Sawyer. Again, his book is Choice Point. There is a link to that on our website. There's also a link to our brand new sponsor, Athletic Brewing Company. Go there to have your non-alcoholic craft beers, and we're talking top-notch, delicious craft beers sent to your house, or find out where you can buy them in your neighborhood. And with that, we'll get out of here. And if you have not yet, by the way, please do subscribe for our email newsletter. We are putting a lot of attention on that and trying to get a lot of valuable tips, things like this, things that we're working on, things that we're doing to improve our lives. We're trying to share those through that newsletter. So we hope you'll sign up. You can also do that at our website, thefitmess.com. With that, we're going to wrap things up, and we will be back with a brand new episode in just a couple of weeks at thefitmess.com. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
See you, everyone.
We know this podcast is amazing and does not seem to lack anything, but we do need a legal disclaimer. Jeremy and Zach are not doctors. They do not play them on the internet, and even if they did play them on the internet, they would be really bad at it. Please consult your physician prior to implementing any changes that you heard on this podcast. The listener assumes that Jeremy and Zach do not know what they are talking about, and that you will do your own research on the topics talked about on this podcast.